CHAPTER V M. Lenormand at Work On the morning of the 31st of May, all the newspapers reminded their readers that Lupin, in a letter addressed to M. Lenormand, had announced the escape of the messenger Jérôme for that date. And one of them summed up the situation, as it then stood, in very able terms: "The horrible carnage at the Palace Hotel took place as far back as the 17th of April. What has been discovered since? Nothing. There were three clues: the cigarette case, the initials L and M, and the parcel of clothes left behind in the office of the hotel. What advantage has been taken of these clues? None. It appears that the police suspect one of the visitors who was staying on the first floor and who disappeared in a doubtful manner. Have they found him? Have they established his identity? No. The tragedy, therefore, remains as mysterious as at the beginning. The gloom is impenetrable. To complete the picture, we are told that dissension prevails between the prefect of police and his subordinate, M. Lenormand, and that the latter, finding himself less vigorously supported by the prime minister, virtually sent in his resignation several days ago. According to our information, the conduct of the Kesselbach case is now in the hands of the deputy chief of the detective service, M. Weber, a personal enemy of M. Lenormand's. In short, disorder and confusion reign; and this in the face of Lupin, who stands for method, energy and steadfastness of mind. What conclusion do we draw from these facts? Briefly this: Lupin will release his accomplice to day, the 31st of May, as he foretold. This conclusion, which was echoed in all the other newspapers, was also the conclusion at which the general public had arrived; and we must take it that the threat was not considered devoid of importance in high places, for the prefect of police and, in the absence of M. Lenormand, who was said to be unwell, the deputy chief of the detective service, M. Weber, had adopted the most stringent measures, both at the Palais de Justice and at the Santé Prison, where the prisoner was confined. They did not dare, for sheer reasons of shame, to suspend on that particular day the examinations conducted daily by M. Formerie; but, from the prison to the Boulevard du Palais, a regular mobilization of police forces guarded the streets along the line. To the intense astonishment of one and all, the 31st of May passed, and the threatened escape did not take place. One thing did happen: an attempt to execute the plan, as was betrayed by a block of tramway cars, omnibuses and drays along the road taken by the prison van and the unaccountable breaking of one of the wheels of the van itself. But the attempt assumed no more definite form. Lupin, therefore, had met with a check. The public felt almost disappointed and the police triumphed loudly. On the next day, Saturday, an incredible rumour spread through the Palais and the newspaper offices: Jérôme the messenger had disappeared. Was it possible? Although the special editions confirmed the news, people refused to believe it. But at 6 o'clock a note published by the Dépêche du Soir made it official. We have received the following communication signed by Arsène Lupin. The special stamp affixed to it, in accordance with the circular which Lupin recently sent to the press, guarantees the genuineness of the document. "To the editor of the Dépêche du Soir. "SIR, pray make my apologies to the public for not keeping my word yesterday. I remembered, at the last moment, that the 31st of May fell on a Friday. Could I set my friend at liberty on a Friday? I did not think it right to assume that responsibility. I must also apologize for not on this occasion explaining, with my customary frankness, how this little event was managed. My process is so ingenious and so simple that I fear lest, if I revealed it, every criminal should be inspired by it. How surprised people will be on the day when I am free to speak! Is that all? I shall be asked. That is all. But it had to be thought of. Permit me to be, Sir, your obedient servant, Arsène Lupin." An hour later, M. Lenormand was rung up on the telephone and informed that Valenglay, the prime minister, wished to see him at the Ministry of the Interior. "How well you're looking, my dear Lenormand! And I who thought that you were ill and dared not leave your room!" "I am not ill, Monsieur le Président." "So you were sulking in your tent? But you were always a bad-tempered fellow." "I confess to the bad temper, Monsieur le Président, but not to the sulking." "But you stay at home; and Lupin takes advantage of it to release his friends." "How could I stop him?" "How? Why, Lupin's trick was of the plainest. In accordance with his usual method, he announced the date of the escape beforehand. Everybody believed in it. An apparent attempt was planned. The escape was not made. And, on the next day, when nobody is thinking about it, whoosh, the bird takes flight." "Monsieur le Président," said the chief of the detective service solemnly, Lupin disposes of such means that we are not in a position to prevent what he has decided on. The escape was mathematically certain. I preferred to pass the hand and leave the laughter for others to face." Valenglay chuckled: "It's a fact that Monsieur le Préfet de Police and M. Weber cannot be enjoying themselves at the present moment. But, when all is said, can you explain to me, Monsieur Lenormand?" "All that we know, Monsieur le Président, is that the escape took place from the Palais de Justice. The prisoner was brought in a prison van and taken to M. Formerie's room. He left M. Formerie's room, but he did not leave the Palais de Justice. And yet nobody knows what became of him. It's most bewildering." "Most bewildering. And has nothing else been discovered?" "Yes, the inner corridor leading to the examining magistrate's rooms was blocked by an absolutely unprecedented crowd of prisoners, warders, counsel and doorkeepers, and it was discovered that all those people had received forged notices to appear at the same hour. On the other hand, not one of the examining magistrates who were supposed to have summoned them sat in his room that day; and this because of forged notices from the public prosecutor's office, sending them to every part of Paris and of the outskirts." "Is that all?" "No. 2 municipal guards and a prisoner were seen to cross the courtyards. A cab was waiting for them outside and all three stepped in." "And your supposition, Lenormand? Your opinion?" "My supposition, Monsieur le Président, is that the 2 municipal guards were accomplices who, profiting by the disorder in the corridor, took the place of the 3 warders. And my opinion is that this escape succeeded only through such special circumstances and so strange a combination of facts that we must look upon the most unlikely cases of complicity as absolutely certain. Lupin, for that matter, has connections at the Palais that balk all our calculations. He has agents in your ministry. He has agents at the Prefecture of Police. He has agents around me. It is a formidable organization, a detective service 1,000 times more clever, more daring, more varied and more supple than that under my own orders." "And you stand this, Lenormand?" "No, I do not." "Then why this slackness on your part since the beginning of the case? What have you done against Lupin?" "I have prepared for the struggle." "Capital! And while you were preparing, he was acting." "So was I." "And do you know anything?" "I know a great deal." "What? Speak." Leaning on his stick, M. Lenormand took a little contemplative walk across the spacious room. Then he sat down opposite Valenglay, brushed the facings of his olive green coat with his finger tips, settled his spectacles on his nose and said plainly: "Monsieur le Président, I hold 3 trump cards in my hand. First, I know the name under which Arsène Lupin is hiding at this moment, the name under which he lived on the Boulevard Haussmann, receiving his assistants daily, reconstructing and directing his gang." "But then why, in heaven's name, don't you arrest him?" "I did not receive these particulars until later. The prince let us call him Prince Dash has disappeared. He is abroad, on other business." "And if he does not return?" "The position which he occupies, the manner in which he has flung himself into the Kesselbach case, necessitate his return and under the same name." "Nevertheless. ..." "Monsieur le Président, I come to my second trump. I have at last discovered Pierre Leduc." "Nonsense!" "Or rather Lupin discovered him and, before disappearing, settled him in a little villa in the neighbourhood of Paris." "By Jove! But how did you know?" "Oh, easily. Lupin has placed 2 of his accomplices with Pierre Leduc, to watch him and defend him. Now these accomplices are 2 of my own detectives, 2 brothers whom I employ in the greatest secrecy and who will hand him over to me at the first opportunity." "Well done you! So that, as Pierre Leduc, we may say, is the central point of the efforts of all those who are trying to solve the famous Kesselbach secret, I shall, sooner or later, through Pierre Leduc, catch, first, the author of the treble murder, because that miscreant substituted himself for Mr. Kesselbach in the accomplishment of an immense scheme and because Mr. Kesselbach had to find Pierre Leduc in order to be able to accomplish that scheme; and, secondly, Arsène Lupin, because Arsène Lupin is pursuing the same object." "Splendid! Pierre Leduc is the bait which you are throwing to the enemy." "And the fish is biting, Monsieur le Président. I have just had word that a suspicious person was seen, a short time ago, prowling round the little villa where Pierre Leduc is living under the protection of my officers. I shall be on the spot in 4 hours." "And the third trump, Lenormand?" "Monsieur le Président, a letter arrived yesterday, addressed to Mr. Rudolf Kesselbach, which I intercepted." "Intercepted, eh? You're getting on!" "Yes, I intercepted it, opened it and kept it for myself. Here it is. It is dated 2 months back. It bears the Cape Town postmark and contains these words: 'My dear Rudolf, I shall be in Paris on the 1st of June and in just as wretched a plight as when you came to my assistance. But I have great